Hey y'all, it's Madeline coming at you, some Omega energy. We have the new moon in Gemini today. And when we talk about Gemini energy, I want you to know that is expression of your breath. It's air energy. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. If you forgot, now you remember. Gemini is two-sided and multifaceted in that way. These are the artistes of any particular collective. They're more artistic than most. And you know, a lot of the most popular musicians and songwriters are Geminis or air signs. The artistic nature blends so well with the darkness and light of all of the collective. I've experienced this new moon energy very succinctly. In other words, I experienced the shadow and the light of myself as I am right now. And it was like a little touchstone on what it is that I am still here to work on for myself. Even if I work on it for myself and it benefits someone else later. In this energy, you can utilize it in such a way to examine your shadow self and your light self and see if there's any incongruence or things that need to be balanced out still. And I discovered I have things I still need to balance out. Y'all know I got stories. So what I discovered as I was looking for wounds, I was literally looking to see if there was something. And one of the things I discovered is I'm still working through the wounding that I had from a lot of the things that were taken and a lot of people who abandoned, a lot of people who misunderstood my intentions and then lashed out at me. And I'm just like, what? A lot of the misconceptions about me is still things that there are times where I've attempted over and over again to ward myself in the confusion of it all, to do something about it, to figure out a way to explain myself or figure out a way to explain the circumstances in such a way where we can bridge the gap and come together. And every single time I stop myself because I'm like, if I have to sit here and try to explain to you after the life that I've lived, to anybody after the life that I've lived to get to where I am right now, that I deserve respect and decency, then I don't want to do it. That's a stubborn part of me. I'm not playing your game. I don't want to play it. Like, you gonna go ahead and keep on thinking that I'm this way then, because I ain't explaining shit to you. And the biggest one that's still like a hurdle is like both my professional identity being ransacked. I'm like, if y'all gonna ransack me, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you. What I said, I'm gonna help you. It's like, oh, you coming for me? At a certain point, and I will tell y'all honestly, at a certain point, it's like, if I'm going down, we both going down. If we gonna knock this building down, then I guess we gonna knock it down with both of us inside of it. That's the way. And I don't know the cliche version of explaining that, but I said that so that you can understand that there are things that I know I cannot undo, and I laugh about them now. But at the time, I was either enraged, incensed, or in deep despair and crying. But I still was fighting, and I always will fight. And so there's a part of me that knows. It's like, I don't want to get in a space ever again where I feel like I am in danger of abusing the authority that's been granted me. And sometimes authority is 3D and sometimes it is not. I'll just put that way. But mostly, it's a part of me that yearns, and I don't know if anybody else can understand this, that yearns to be treated gently. So I think the perception of me is that I'm just tough chick that can handle and take anything, and that don't have to be not true for the other side to also be true, that I would like to be treated gently. I would like to be treated kindly. I would like to also be treated as though I can have misunderstandings and be reasoned with. Now, there are times in which who I've developed into has been challenging for me to even conceptualize. And the things that I've overcome has been challenging for me to remember. There was a certain point in which I was, we'll call it awakening further, because I had already started the awakening process, and I'm sure y'all are familiar with the terminology. If you're not, you can go and Google it. I started to do that when I was quite young. Didn't understand, I didn't have no terminology for it back then. I do now. But it's like I got a cluster of upgrades and a cluster of downloads and a cluster of a lot of the stuff that took me, used to take years or months. 1 year I'll have a big epiphany download and physical, spiritual upgrades, and then that's be it for the year. At that particular time that I'm talking about, I had 10 to 20 years worth just poured into me all at once, and that was a lot. My folks tell me at the time, you can handle it, you can take it. It's that cliche. You ain't no more will be put on you than you can bear. And I'm like, you know what? I think I might be struggling a bit. It's like the frame of the house is coming down, y'all. I need y'all to understand the frame of the house is freaking coming in. It's bowing. Tell me you guys ain't gonna put no more on you than you can bear. So just at that particular point in time, remember I told y'all there were times where I knew when my friends were gonna either abandon me, betray me, or leave me, or we're gonna have a falling out, or we're just gonna separate just because, people change, distance, all that stuff, whatever. But I had one particular friend who I hadn't talked to in a while, but just as, again, I was on the precipice of that house just bowing, she just came to me, and it was during the time in which, and we've talked, there's a video down there somewhere where I've talked about this before. Y'all can find it if you want. But I was in such a dark place while still in trust. It's still trying to express some levels of light. And I had to try. It was a struggle. I was in such a dark place. And it was like, definitely one of those moments in which I'm like, get somebody else to do it. Get some freaking body else to do it. Because this place and the majority of its inhabitants are so disgusting to me at this particular point. I don't want to do none of this, but I also don't care what happens. Right? And on top of it, felt very, very lonely. And there's still moments of loneliness with it. Don't get it twisted. I just handle it a lot differently now. But it was incredibly, excruciatingly lonely. Even when I was in a room full of people, it was excruciatingly lonely. So it came, I forget what happened. It was like a falling out or something like that. Well, she came to me right as, again, the house was buckling. And she came to me and she just listened. And it freaked her out. A lot of the stuff I had been going through, it freaked her out. But she didn't run, which was important to me because so many people was afraid of me at that particular point in time. And it wasn't, believe it or not, some people back then was like, seemed like you want everybody to be scared of you. Like, believe it or not, it wasn't my intent to make people afraid of me. The fear was within me. I had dealt with so many people hurting me at that particular point that I'm just like, well, if you're going to act like that, I can be the big bad wolf that you decide that you wanted to be to me. And all of the energy that I had absorbed at that particular point was just pouring out of me. I don't know any other way to explain that. I had a lot of Kanye moments. Speaking of Gemini. And I don't even knock Kanye. I wish people would not give him such a hard time as some side stuff. Because Kanye is not expressing anything that is inherently wrong. Just because someone don't like facts, that don't make them not facts. You might say, well, what about the anti-Semitic things she's saying? Well, what if it's not anti-Semitic? Like, it comes across that way. I will not deny. It does. Some of it did. But what if some of the things he experienced, it's kind of like this. This is a better way to describe this. There were times in which I encountered people who were bigots and racists. Okay, there are times in my life where I've encountered people like this. But I've come to the understanding, if you sit down and talk to somebody long enough, you'll start to realize where that came from. They are being, at that particular point, they're a product of their experiences, even if it was taught to them. And they don't know anything different other than what was taught to them and what they experienced. And maybe inherently they're not evil or a bad person. Okay? So there are some that are like that, who if you sit down with them and talk to them for a bit and actually experience life with them for a bit, they begin to change their mind and their heart because they have a different experience with someone who has melanin in their skin. But if their entire existence, they've been robbed, they've been, not saying that that's all that people in this can do, but if this is this one person's experience, that first they were taught from a little bitty person, excuse me, ooh, I hope y'all didn't hear that, a little bitty person, that anyone that didn't look like them is something to be feared. And then they try to maybe combat that because they have maybe friends or something like that, experiences in school, grade school, high school, or maybe they don't. Maybe they have none of that. And then they get to be an adult, and then one of their first excruciating experiences is some person of color committing an act of violence upon them, or someone that they care about. And it confirms the bias, and they have nothing else to draw information from. That kind of person could possibly not be inherently evil. They need other experiences. And I know some people like, it's not our job to educate them, it's an act of love. And if you feel like this is a side, but those folks who's understood the God principle within them, especially those with melanin popping, those who can absorb those rays. If you deem yourself in some way superior, and some of you clearly do, what will make you superior is seeing beyond the fault and seeing the need and knowing it's part of your duty as an honor to be of service without alleviating yourself from safety. In other words, if somebody's a true danger to you, go on ahead and show them who you are. But if they're not truly a danger and they've just been hurt and harmed themselves and misguided, your job is to love them. That's what my assignment is. I don't know what your assignment is. Maybe your assignment is different than mine, but that's what mine is. Okay, that's what I'm doing. But that's on some side stuff. And as it pertains to Kanye in that particular way, he's been in the music industry for quite some time and experienced a whole lot of things. And he ain't the only person who is a celebrity that said they experienced some things at the hands of those people within the music industry. And I think Dave Chappelle explained it best. He said it without saying it in an SNL monologue. But the same people who had the power to strip him of billions within days are the same people he was talking about. And someone with that amount of power to be able to strip you of billions within a matter of days, when there's literal billionaires out here doing the absolute most, and when I say the absolute most, for the least of us. In other words, they ain't trying to share their billions, which some people are like, you should. If you earned it, you shouldn't share it. But what if they didn't earn it? What if they stole it by legal means? Because there are legal means to steal money in this country. If nothing else, President Trump then told y'all, and put it right on Front Street, is that there are legal means in which you can steal money in this country, and nobody can do anything to touch you. Depending on how rich you are, you are untouchable. So if he's inartfully sometimes demonstrating his frustration with that, while also you've never heard of him, see, the words and the actions would need to line up for me, at least for me, to feel like he's someone who just hates people just because they're a certain race or culture. His words were born out of frustration with those who had the power to cause him harm and have caused him harm. And if you see that from that perspective, you don't see an anti-Semite, you see someone who's been harmed. And instead of shining a light on the person who's been harmed, regardless of what they're being said, maybe just look at what's making them say all that stuff. That's kind of how I viewed it. And then you look at Mariah Carey's experience, Martin Lawrence's experience, Dave Chappelle's experience. And they're just amongst the few that we all saw the evidence of. And you'll realize he's being harmed by some faction and some people, and that's the only way he knows how to describe them, because they all have that one thing in common. Does not mean that all people who have that in common are similar. That's what he was expressing. But it's easier to be reactionary or to pick a side, because whatever's popular is what's popping, and everybody wants to be on the side that's popping. Or if you're going to pick a side, you're going to strongly sit in that side without even for 1 second considering there might be an alternative to warring with each other. Maybe just taking a look at it and seeing what's going on with that. But that's a weird thing to talk about nowadays, I suppose. But I'm weird. I'm good with it. And that's just an example of some of the things that I've experienced within this Gemini energy. Because during Gemini season, we just saw our full moon in Sagittarius. I'm a Sagittarius, and we talked about this. But that equal opposite energy is always going to be pulling. And whenever there's a lunar cycle where the equal opposite energy of the sun is present, this is an astrological thing. You ain't got to believe in it. You could just perceive and say it could be attributed to anything, and we can call that good. That's the great thing about having an open dialogue. It's not trying to force somebody to believe what you believe. You give them what your thoughts and ideas on something is, and then you let them decide for themselves. That's what I choose to do, but I don't know about nobody else. I wish that was done for me, so I do it for others, and that's the only reason why I do it. So many people trying to convince me that I need to be one thing or the other. Another thing that triggered me, speaking of which, I was sitting down minding my own little business. I suppose it's a colleague. We're going to call this person being a colleague. Saw me out of the corner of his eye, I suppose, and decided he wanted to sit down with me and told me my journey and things that I teach is not grounded in anything, and I have to choose something. And I'm like, sir, I refuse. What you get, Catholic, non-denominational Christian, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Hinduism, Taoism, something grounded in something. Who says I'm ungrounded? You says I'm ungrounded. If I'm ungrounded, I will be ungrounded until I figure out how to create the ground for my path. At this particular point, that's where I'm at. He seemed to not accept that answer. Well, sir, I made it clear at that particular time that that's what my choice is at the moment, because history has shown me that those who choose limit themselves in their ideas, concepts, and expression by making that choice. I don't not make a choice because I'm afraid to make one. I don't not make a choice because one has not been presented to me. That is all of me. But some people can say, I identify with Christianity, I identify with Catholicism because it feels right. Well, nothing has felt wrong as it pertains to belief structures, but nothing has felt 100% right. And I think it's supposed to be that way so we can keep an open mind. And that's what I'm grounded in. Autonomy. I'm also grounded in the concept that universal law is still paramount. Science is still important to understand. And so I agree with the atheist more often than not than I agree with anybody who have a religious doctrine and structure. And here's why. After everything I've experienced, and most of the things I haven't told y'all of what I experienced, but I've experienced a lot, and I've told y'all a lot thus far, so y'all know I have some concept and belief there's something more than here that is alive. But I agree with the atheist more often than not, mostly because I agree with the concept that it is problematic to assume. Because your book says, and someone told you to believe, and if you do believe, that makes you more righteous. It's not just a belief. To me, you can believe in absolutely nothing up there. And here's the part where it got real tough for me during this Gemini energy. He did cause this person who decided to come and join me and talk about these things. I ain't never seen it before. In my life. This happens to me quite often. What he did cause me to sit down and think about is, what is it? To me, I've always envisioned the pyramid. One of the reasons why I have it tattooed on me is like, I dreamed it, yeah, but I've always envisioned the pyramid. In my meditation, in my mind's eye, I see geometric shapes. When I close my eyes, ever since I was a kid, I close my eyes and I see geometry. Before I even knew what geometry was, or spiritual, sacred geometry was, any of that, I would see it. I can command it to come to my mind's eyes when my eyes are closed. It was easier when I was younger, though. I can't explain that to you, and I don't always know the purpose for it. Sometimes I'm projecting energy and thoughts, and sometimes nothing at all, just calming myself. That's neither here nor there. But based on the experiences I've had with my folks, as well as just, we'll call it astral travel or universal travel outside of this being when I'm not asleep. Times in which I can meditate and just float all the way in my mind. Where am I going? What is the energy that protects me? What is the energy that came and told me of the things that it told me that was to come? What helps me when I was younger before I could understand it? What is it? And I've been asking those questions since I was very little. And then more questions get tagged on top of that. And the thing that really made me sit down and wonder is that not at any time was I told I needed to go to a building and worship. I was told to understand worship. I was never told to believe in any one thing. I was told to understand belief. I was told to empathize with all of it while understanding it. But I was never asked at one point, no point at all was I ever asked or tempted to participate. I thought that was what I was supposed to do, to be a part of the communities and belong. But whatever God is, and if that was God, or some kind of energy that represents the universal existence of what we conceive as God, never once was I told I needed to have an altar to kill anything, slaughter anything, offer anything. I was never told any of these things from this. I was told to be humble, to be kind. I've always been instructed to protect myself and defend or fend for those who are unable to protect themselves in my presence. To do the best I can for myself and those around me. To be merciless to those who are merciless to me, if they be a true threat. Now that part I've had difficulty with. On both spectrums. Sometimes I didn't want to fight, and sometimes I wanted to fight too much. And that was born out of anger, hurt, and pain. But never once was I told, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, that the answer to the universe or anything else was outside of me as it pertains to belief structure. I was never told that I needed to believe in anything in particular. I was told to seek the answers out for myself. Find out what resonated with me, and then respect everything else. And that's the only truth I know. After everything, that's the only truth I know. As it pertains to such things. And is ever going to be a belief ever again that is streamlined whether you be atheist or believer in something. I can tell you one thing, I stand as a witness to the fact that those belief structures are born from the essence of man and the identity and imagination from man. There's literally nothing. The creator of all things, I'd imagine, based on these experiences, and I could be wrong, and that's another thing that I was challenged to always presume, that I could be wrong and something else can change my point of view. And that's the true essence of intelligence, is always being willing to learn and know more and accepting the new education, unless something else then comes along and changes that. And I've been practicing that my whole spiritual journey. I've said it before in many places. Something is powerful if there be something, even though I've not completely located or understood it, and I don't think I'm supposed to, or maybe I am, I don't know. If there be something powerful enough to create all things, and then create things that is similar to it, as a first round draft of humans, and then create more things lower than that, we would call that Elohim and Demi and Semis, for those who are in the know. And then those things are challenged to create us, if that be so inclined to imagine. It don't have to be true for you. I'm just saying, give yourself a chance to sit down and imagine it. The thing at the tippy top of that pyramid of creation would not require anything from you. That's what I've learned so far. Everything else is a creation of man, by man, to comfort themselves. A little different than a pacifier. And just put it this way. Imagine for yourself, you're in a big room full of celebrities, and you know this event is going to be packed to the brim, like the Oscars or something. And you know the list they have, the A-list, B-list, C-list, D-list actors. So imagine this is all A-list actors with one that you know is like at the tippy top of the A-listers. And you go into this room and you see all the A-listers, all the heavy hitters in one room. But it is obvious that someone is missing. You've never seen their presence. You've only imagined who they are. And you're on the A-list. Everybody seems so glamorous and big and wonderful and glorious. And they're out, with their cocktail glasses, and they're talking and perusing the room and intermingling, and they are aware of you, but they don't care about you because you're not on the A-list. But suddenly imagine that you're summoned and you go into a room and the tippy top of the A-listers are not wearing anything flashy. They ain't got no champagne glass. Not as big or as nothing or glorious looking as the others. Just sitting there in a tiny, tiny room all by itself. Content with nothing. And you are aware that it's the A-list of all the A-listers, the tippy top. And imagine being confused by this. If you're the most powerful A-lister, why are you not out with the rest of them, being praised, getting this champagne glass moment on with your gown and your fur or your tuxedo? Why are you not out there with the rest of them? There's nothing wrong with that doing. If it responds to you, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't require it. And that's how I see the universal energy. That's how I've perceived it. And that's how I've experienced it. It needs nothing. Again, I've always been encouraged to understand that something can come along and change my mind. Keep an open mind. I understand it from that perspective. But be willing to learn everything. Or something about it, or be educated about it. Keep an open mind about everything. Because my aim and goal is not to get anybody to believe in God. It never was. Now, there were moments when I wanted to brag on the fact that I've had some of these experiences. Again, it was born out of ego because I was being hurt and harmed. And I felt hurt and harmed. And I felt shame and resentment. So I'm like, you mean to tell me I went through all these trials and all these things and I have all this power within me? You had the nerve and audacity to disrespect my energy? But I've come to understand it made me no different. Not that anything's wrong with it, if that floats your boat. Than anybody else I've just described in that big old A-lister event that required the Golden Globe or the Oscar, or the furs and the tuxes. And there's nothing wrong with that. They earn the right to be in that room, I suppose. But I'm not trying to be the humble that's in the back room necessarily, because I don't even know if I can achieve that, even though there are times I try. I just understand it. And it's been a pleasure to know it and understand it from that perspective of knowing. See, that I've told y'all before, I don't believe in anything other than myself and the things that I perceive. As it pertains to belief in deities and things like that, I don't believe. I know. I've had enough of time, experiences, and pleasures to meet enough of those A-listers in that room I just described. While understanding, even they too were created. And it could just be my imagination, I suppose. But whatever would create them would need nothing from us. I would suppose that even if one was so willing to aid human beings with their suffering by showing them there are ways that they can be humble, and if they humble their hearts, they can find some semblance of love for themselves and in one another, so maybe that would be allowed. Religions and religious beliefs. But I don't think it was ever meant to be a weapon against humanity. Human beings created that part. They're like children. Even as grown-ups, that's not a grown-up alive that don't see a child and remember exactly what that felt like. What that experience felt like. Because that's still who they are. Their bodies just got big. And they were forced into responsibility, some of which did not want. They're still kids. There's no reason why a lot of them are still online fussing with each other. And they're just wrapping themselves up in twine, in metaphorical twine and circles. There are sometimes I used to engage in that too, but even that I realized very shortly after it's just fruitless, so I won't argue with anybody. That's why I tell you, not because I dismiss you. That's why I say I won't argue with you here. Not because I dismiss your ideas or your opinions. It's just that arguing about it's not going to change nothing. Both of us educating each other in some kind of way and deciding that we're going to at least take a real look at what the other person has to say. And then if we keep our opinion the same, we respect that of one another and still be kind to each other after that. That's the sweet spot for me. Okay? I've been rambling on for a while. I just hope I helped in some kind of way y'all understand. Maybe, just maybe, nobody's wrong, but everybody's misunderstanding each other. And if everybody's misunderstanding each other because of a place of hurt and ego and exhaustion, spiritual exhaustion, I feel like is real rampant right now. Maybe it's time to go sit down with yourself and figure out, maybe I keep it simple and go with the golden rule and use it as that. And everybody, one thing I will say that I've come to, again, know, not necessarily believe, but know, karmic energy is universal energy. Dharma is also universal energy. And if you believe in nothing else, understand dharma and karma for its effects. It's the physics of those energies. And if you understand the physics, you understand why I told you in one of my more recent videos, take the time to make amends with yourself, forgive yourself, and then take the time. That's why I think, even though I do not subscribe to the 12 steps as it pertains to addictions and things of the like, mostly because abstinence as a treatment, and I can say this from a scientific perspective as well as an expert perspective, only works for a specific subset of the population, but we need something. And no other alternatives do not exist, not because they don't work, like harm reduction. It works. It's just that it's not popular to get money from people for harm reduction, because if we say harm reduction, that means that people still get to use a little bit until they wean themselves off, and nobody wants to financially pay for or subsidize that, or be deemed in some way illegitimate, or looked at in some kind of negative light from the community. So they don't subsidize that. So there's not a treatment plan for that typically across the board. And that is my biggest gripe with it. Side stuff. Because something ain't popular, even though it's an effective treatment, we're just not going to do it. Who do you really care about? Dollars. Anyway, let me Aquarius for a second. Okay, y'all? Anyway. Just Aquarius. Sometimes that's how it is. But I do subscribe to the concept that if you give yourself over to a higher power, it does not have to be God or human concept of God. The higher power can be your own humbleness in your inner self, or you in your most gentlest state. Saying that right now, I'm choosing. It may not last but 5 seconds, but I'm choosing to be all love for myself and everybody around me. Now, all love does not mean a lack of self-love. So, of course, you're not going to let anybody hurt or harm you in that process. But you also won't hurt or harm anybody else or yourself in that process. And it don't need to be more, need to be bigger than that. We can keep it simple, stupid. We can at any time. It doesn't mean that the rituals and things that go on within different constructs, no matter what your belief structure are not effective, because that is alchemy. Whether it be alchemy of the thoughts, alchemy of the environment, alchemy of the energy, seen and unseen in that environment. No different than the sage that you see the Catholic priest swinging in the mass. They understood a long time ago from the Hermetics and the chemists that smudging the air balances out the energy within that mofo. So the natives didn't just decide one day to just stop burning sage. It's something that's been around since ancient times, and the Catholics do it too. Okay, it's not something that's inherently evil. You're balancing out the energy around you somehow. And if you're consistent with it and you're not the bad energy in a room, just constantly recycling it, it can be effective. Like that. So the rituals and stuff that happens in traditional religions and things of nature do have its purpose. It brings on a sense of community within factions. It brings in togetherness and things of that nature. And I think it's no different than the experiences I have when I see something that I've worked on or that I've worked with get corrupted somehow. It infuriates me and makes me want to lash out. I'm understanding more and more and more that no matter how good your intentions is, that don't mean they're paved with cobblestones to hell necessarily. It means that you need to understand where you're at. It's like when going to a state like California or a city like Los Angeles and wearing the wrong colors in the wrong neighborhood. And for those who don't understand it, that means in gang territory. If you understand that you're pouring light into a very dark place, you would understand if you're pouring white into black, it's going to turn gray. It's not going to stay white. That was my ignorance and acting out of that ignorance when I reacted, the times I have reacted. And I'm still working that through my self-stone and balancing it out and transmuting it. Just some things to think about. Again, I hope I wasn't all over the place. This is me. This is my expression of that Gemini energy too. It's like I definitely adhere to the moon cycles more often than not. You know, I saw a comedian the other day that I love, Tom Segura. I hope I'm saying that right. I know it's an old clip, and he was on stage. It's like, I respect, if it gives you comfort, religion that you prescribe to or whatever. I'm not quoting it directly. It's like general gist of what he was saying. And the thing that really was okay, insulted a little bit, but okay, I still laughed. He was like, I would never disrespect you for that, but I would I would not think you're stupid. I think you're stupid if you read your horoscope every day. And he's not wrong necessarily about that. I wouldn't call him stupid, but he's not wrong necessarily about that because the horoscope is so generalized, and there's so much more to astrology than a generalized passage that will be one size fit all for any particular sun sign. Okay? But there is more to it, and only an ignorant person would think that. And I'm not saying Tom Segura is incredibly intelligent. As a matter of fact, he's one of my favorite comedians. But there's a lot of people who think that. But modern medicine and all of science, as well as most of the most brilliant minds that come out of human beings evolving, one of the things that they mastered was astrology for a reason. It was also human beings that started to deconstruct that and deem it illegitimate because it didn't serve their purposes. But doesn't mean it's not a valid art form or science. It depends on your opinion. But I can tell you what, I understand more now in my life because of it. It's educated me in ways that college never did because I understand it. I happen to have a natural gift for it, but I also understand it. Understand how it applies to medicine. Understand how it applies to the spirit. Understand how it applies to emotional well-being and wellness. I understand I can apply across the board and across arts as well as sciences because it's both art and science mixed together. But the brilliant minds of old understood this in a way that current human beings do not. And here's the thing. Even though it's getting more mainstream astrology and the belief in the structures and tenets of it, I don't believe it's safe in everybody's hands. I'm gonna be honest. I don't believe it's safe. It's like chemistry is not safe in everybody's hands. Okay? There's people out there cooking meth right now that understand chemistry. For example. It's not always safe to have everybody know everything. I ain't here gatekeeping. I teach as I teach. But I'm discerning as I teach. Anyway, I've gone on for about 44 minutes now. Hope I have in some way enlightened you or helped you in some way. If nothing else, you learned a little bit more about yours truly. You're loved.